Welcome back to Terror by the Bay. I'm David. I've been reading this in the news, but I finally sat down to actually read through it in the news. The events in Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, having a vote basically removing what is known as the reasonability clause from the Supreme Court. Basically, in a nutshell, if Israeli lawmakers pass a law, the Supreme Court can review it and make a determination if the law is reasonable. If the law is not reasonable, they can overturn it because it's an unreasonable law. And that's a check on extremism. Well, in a vote that was 64 to nothing because the opposition party left, the opposition party has like 60 votes, and the far-right ruling party has 64 votes, so votes on party lines. They voted to remove that clause. This led to widespread protests throughout Israel. And the police were going out with water cannons, and they said skunk water cannons. So I imagine they're adding additives to the water cannon to not only just make it water, but add skunk smell to it as well. Against peaceful protesters, as the article in Politico was writing. The head of the military wanted to have a meeting with Netanyahu before these votes, but Netanyahu wouldn't take it. Irony here, Netanyahu was almost late for his own vote because he was having emergency surgery to put in a pacemaker. I'll let that one sit for you. The guy's heart isn't working properly, and he needed a pacemaker so that he could take a stab at the heart of the country. Mossad basically said they would follow the rule of law, but nobody knows what that means. There's questions as who the police officers will follow. Will they follow Netanyahu's lead, or will they follow the Supreme Court's lead? Because the Supreme Court could vote to say that the vote to remove the reasonability clause is unreasonable, and therefore null and void it, and then the government can null and void the Supreme Court, to which the Supreme Court could null and void that, and you have yourself a constitutional crisis. So the question is, who's the military going to line up behind? Who are the police going to line up behind? Who are the intelligence agencies going to line up behind? I think Linda G's been reading on this, and she keeps seeing Netanyahu removed. So I want to read on it. I've got some black tourmaline and I've got some obsidian to ground me, because this one's really a heavy reading. And if you think about it, this is democracy on the knife's edge. This is what will happen in this country if Donald Trump and the Republicans gain control of Congress and the presidency again. This is the path we'll go down. Now, mind you, they already have control of the Supreme Court, but if anything were to change, they would try to make sure that they hold control of all the levers of power, and that's how your authoritarian governments start. So Israel is literally fighting for its life. A bunch of Air Force Reserve pilots signed a petition saying that if the government did this, they would resign their commissions and would not report, and they did. Like half of their reserve pilots are no longer in the Army, in the Air Force Reserves because of this. So, a very passionate people who really understand the gravity of what's going on here. And hopefully with these 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I've explained to you the gravity of the situation that's going on here. Okay, so tell me what's going on in Israel right now, Spirit, please. Give us a little bit more background on the energy that's around there. Okay, Queen of Cups. So this is the passion. The cup, the lid has been on the cup, and now the lid's been blown off. And that's true. There's been peaceful protests, gatherings. The protesters for months have had that uneasy peace that, nothing had happened, and they had let their feelings be known. Would the government actually try and force their will on them? And the answer is yes. So now the cup comes off on the feelings, hence all the widespread protests. And then you've got a cross by the tower. So this is with the sudden change that this government has implemented, and it's bringing the country to the brink of destruction. And I'm not overstating that. The Air Force pilots that resigned, they basically were saying that we were here to serve a democracy, not to serve a king. So this is what's at stake. Passions are up because the state is about to be torn down. And underneath it is the Queen of Wands. So action needs to be taken. Action is now being taken by both sides. And there's, in the past, the King of Wands. Okay, so this would be Netanyahu coming up with his plans as to what he's going to do to secure his power. Now, mind you, he's been under investigation for bribery and corruption, and I don't believe he was convicted, but he ran for prime minister under these things, and he still managed to get elected on there. Barely, but he got in there. And now, by taking over the Supreme Court, he can commit crimes anytime he wants. Who's going to check him now? Because now the Supreme Court will be under his control. And the situation is he is trying to steal all the power for himself, leaving very little for everybody else. This is the far right party trying to steal the election, steal the levers of power, steal everything for themselves, even if it means the country's left in destruction, because they're more interested in ruling than governing, just like in the United States. This is where we would be going. It is an absolute nightmare situation. This, I think, the young people and the non-extremists in Israel cannot believe what's happening. The stress levels must be off the charts. Again, think about it. If our country were basically, you gutted the Supreme Court and put it under Trump, and the Republicans are just gleefully, picture Roger Stone or Steve Bannon being made in cabinet positions and now telling you how life is going to be. I believe one guy who was arrested and convicted of extremism like 8 times, his comment was, the salad bar is open. Just incredible dark energies going over there right now. And the fight's not over with. The fight has just begun. The government, I think, has the advantage for the moment, but the people are willing to fight for this. They're not going to roll over. They've not shown they're going to roll over, and they will fight. As the Queen of Wands is saying, who takes the best action is going to be the one who wins this fight. The outcome, that's an interesting card. 4 of Wands. That's the welcoming, but on the low energy, it's also the don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out card. I think that, again, it's about who outlasts in this fight, who takes action, and who wins in this one. Do you boot Netanyahu out of the country, or do you wave your country goodbye and welcome authoritarianism? I have my opinions as to what I think that is, but what's going to color that are going to be the next couple readings I have, which are I should say I'm going to perform here, which would be what's going to happen with the military, the intelligence agencies, and law enforcement. Who are they going to back? And you need 2 of the 3. And I think the intelligence agency is probably one of the ones you need. But if you can get the intelligence agency and the military, the police force will be rendered somewhat useless. If you get the police force and the police force is kind of like the short term thing. The military is going to be the long term, and the intelligence agency is they're the force multiplier. You know what I mean? It's like if you get the intelligence agency whatever you have is multiplied by a factor of 10. Okay, and you don't mess with the Mossad. For entertainment purposes only. That part's not for entertainment purposes only. That part's real. Don't mess with Mossad. Everything else is entertainment purposes only. Okay. Sorry. I have a little bit of a laugh. This is a very serious subject, and I was trying to find stuff I wanted to read on, and it's like, oh God, this is a heavy one. So forgive me if I laugh where I can. The Mossad has a reputation. And when Trump had secret documents on including the military capabilities of a country, and the rumor was it could have been Israel. Oh, the comments, it's like, man, if that's true, Trump's about to find out about the Mossad. That's the one agency you don't want to be on the wrong end of. And I think a lot of agencies would agree with you on that. Okay, military. What's up with the military? Who are they going to back? Page of Pentacles. Offers going out. Crossed with the Queen of Swords. The military is tentatively coming up with an idea, but they're realists as to what's going on. This Queen of Swords doesn't mean, no, the Prime Minister told us what we have to do, therefore we have to do it. This is more the Queen of Swords of the country is at a crossroads. What are we going to do? What are our values? And if I get no other indication as to what their response is, I'm going to go with young people. Okay? In the past, King of Cups. Okay, so I think the military has taken a step back and wait type of approach. They've not tried to commit one way or another. They were going to see what happened and hopefully not get to a military crisis. Now, again, the reason why I think they might be leaning towards the protesters is that the head of the military wanted to meet with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu didn't want to meet with him. That kind of tells me that Netanyahu knew what the conversation was going to be about, and he didn't want to field it. There could be other reasons. They're feeling trapped, but they're trapped by their own volition. They feel like their hands are tied, that they can't do anything about this. Basically, I think what they're waiting for is a leader to come up and lead, and it might just be that lieutenant general that wanted to meet with Netanyahu, he hasn't told them what they're going to do. Maybe they'll follow him, maybe they won't. I don't know. But I think what they're looking for now is leadership. They're looking for a path forward on this. There's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. There's going to be a lot of mayhem in the country, as you might well imagine. And there might be a lot of debate as to what they're going to do. Now, we've never had a coup in our country before. Is this the time that we're going to do that? Who's going to lead? Who's going to be loyal? Are we at the brink of a civil war? That's what they're concerned about. Are we in a civil war? Who do you trust? I can imagine they long for the old days. When it was just everybody else in the world trying to attack and kill them. In this case, though, it's coming from within. Putin, I think it was Putin that had that. I can't tell if my camera's been out of focus on those cards. The way to destroy the U.S. wasn't from outside in, it was from the inside out. And we've been living that the last several years. So if my camera was out of focus, and I think it was, my apologies. Hopefully it's back in focus now. But I think they missed the days when it was just them versus everybody else. Now they have to fight themselves, and that's the worst fight possible. Outcome, 6 of coins. I think, generally speaking, from what I'm seeing here, they're going to provide assistance, but it's not going to be a huge amount of assistance. It's almost like they're going to let the police force decide things, because I think the army is going to take the approach that it's their job to protect Israel from forces outside coming in. Because if there's a civil war or constitutional crisis, other actors in the area might try to take advantage of it. So they can't offer their full support to the protesters. And I think they want to support the protesters because if they wanted to support Netanyahu, they wouldn't care. You wouldn't have this card. This card is showing sympathy. If they didn't have sympathy for it, you wouldn't see this card. They would just be defending the porters, and they would let the police handle everything. But we have judgment here. The military's got to pick a side. As much as they don't want to, they're going to have to pick a side. And I do think they will offer assistance, and they will offer it to the protesters. So, the protesters have basically have the military on their side. And maybe because there's divisions in the military, they can't go more than a 6 points type of effort. Okay, now the police force. Right now, the police force seems to be upholding Netanyahu's position. Going out there and attacking protesters. So who's the police force going to serve? They're going to serve Netanyahu? They're going to serve the protesters. Entertainment purposes only. Eeps. The World card and the Ace of Cups. So those just fell out. Yeah. Strong emotions. World is watching. Could be coming to an end of the Israeli state as we know it. I think the reserve pilots also resigning gives you an idea of the even the split in the military. Said they lost half of their reserve pilots, which means they kept half, which means now half are loyal to the military or loyal to the government, whoever is running the government. Okay, who are the police going to support? Well, we have a show of strength here. Are they going to support the strongman? It looks like it. I mean, right now the police are trying to maintain calm by a force of strength, using water cannons and arresting protesters, so on and so forth. And they could argue that they're keeping the peace, but there's ways to do that without hurting people. And there's judgment on them too. Okay, wow. I'll be interested to see how this comes. I think they're just basically saying, they're telling the protesters that they're in charge. Welcome to the police state. Kind of want to look underneath, and there's the protesters underneath. Yeah, so it's their strength and their judgment is against the protesters. That's kind of how I'm translating this. There's that Queen of Swords again. So in the past, they too have waited and were ready to make the hard decision when it came. And their hard decision is law and order. And right now they view the protesters as being the unlawful, disorderly type. Current situation, they're trying to calm things down. They're trying to lower the temperature of the passions. So we had that Ace of Cups come up in the World card. They're trying to lower the temperature in the country. They're trying to take the passion out of the situation. But why are they doing that? Is the question. I think they want the protesters to leave. They want the passion gone. They want people to leave. But we also have, an eclipse going on over here, and things have not been revealed yet. I think, in some ways, they want everybody to be calmed down until this all plays itself out. But at the same time, the protesters have been calm. It's only upon this latest decision that you've stirred up the hornet's nest. And I don't know what you thought was going to happen. Our job is just to keep the pro. So you got the 6 and the 8, 6 of swords and the 8 of cups, and the strength card and the judgment card. The police want the victory. You get your policemen on the horse fighting off protesters. The police aren't interested in if they're not interested in Netanyahu. They're not interested in the Supreme Court. They're interested in taking these protesters and basically putting them back in line. They're interested in the show of force. They're interested in the prosecution of them. They're thugs. I mean, I don't know another way to describe it. They're being heartless. This is what we do. They're like robots. Out comes the star card. They'll probably be successful in knocking down the protests. I think they feel like they've been successful in calming things down. And again, I think with this water, whether it's the water's going back in the pool or the water's going on the ground, they don't care. Their job is to maintain the peace against these protesters, and that's what they're going to do. Come hell or high water. And this is the next card on the top of the deck. And if they have to leave people out in the cold, if they have to arrest people, it's kind of a heartless thing. So right now, I put the police in the camp of the government because the police are doing what the government tells them to do, which is take the temperature down. They're being robots. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a better metaphor than that. They're just being intellect and law and order. There's not much compassion or empathy being shown in here. It's like, I just did that reading on the fellow in Ohio that was attacked by the police dog. It's like that. They're the police dog. And the protesters are the truck driver. They know that they're supposed to attack the truck driver. It doesn't matter what they're doing. And until the dog is called off, it's going to do its job. No negotiations, no quarter. I've been trained to do this, and now I'm going to do it. Okay. Mossad. Tiebreaker. What's the intelligence agency going to do? Is Linda going to be right? Is the intelligence agency going to be the focus? It's not the police that are going to take Netanyahu out. The military is looking a little tepid. So what's left? The intelligence agency. You can't count on their Congress to do it. The Supreme Court, I'm sure, will fight. We can throw on that too. What will Mossad do? What will the Mossad do? Okay, fighting, looking at the turmoil, crossed with this could have been Netanyahu with that, but I think this is more them sitting here with all the information and all they're the ones in control. They're the ones really in control because they have all the information. What's underneath? Just like the military, they're aligned with the military. Mossad is aligned with the military. This is good because the military is aligned with the protesters who are fighting, and the Mossad's up for that. I think Israel's going to be all right. I just don't know how long this is going to take. Okay, so there's a great card for the Mossad. Here's your intelligence agencies working in the background, working in the dark. Discussing what their plans are going to be. You have internal intelligence, external intelligence, working with the military intelligence. Okay, so they work together. They are aligned, basically. I think right now they can tell the difference between the illusions and delusions. They know who's delusional. They know who's trying to basically delude the country. And if in some ways they're also the psyops. This is like psyops too, redirecting things. So they may start doing psyops on government officials, letting them think that they're supporting the government when they really aren't. This is wild. That's a wild card. I didn't even think about that one. So I think they're assessing. I think they know they've already assessed. Now it's time for their psyops. What are they going to do with governments versus the police versus the protesters in the military? Oh, look at that card comes up again. Now remember I told you that if 2 out of 3 gets the win, and here's the overarching card. Here's the win. Who's coming? Who's going? I love it. I love the fact that this card came up here and this card's underneath, and we've got the fighting involved in there as well. Lover's card. Okay. People that they worked with are on here. I think the military and the intelligence agencies are aligned. They're aligned. They're aligned. And they're aligned. This is a great card over here. They're concerned about Israel as the country. They don't want it to be a dictatorship. Outcome, King of Wands. Netanyahu is the outcome. Now you might ask, does that mean they're going to let him rule? I think they've decided who's the illusion, who's got the illusions and delusions, and it's Netanyahu. And again, it's I think they're helping the protesters underneath here. So their focus is on who's staying or going, and Netanyahu is the focus of who's staying or going. And if you're supporting the protesters and you're wondering what Netanyahu is going to be doing, that means Netanyahu is going to be leaving. Right now, I think for the Mossad, it's timing. When do you do it? Right now, I think you have to let this constitutional crisis play itself out. So now we throw in the Supreme Court. What's the Supreme Court going to do? The other thing with Mossad is if they take Netanyahu out, you're going to have a new leader step in, and probably elections again to keep the government in order. Do you bring in the head of the military? Is it? Okay. What's the Supreme Court going to do? I'm turning into a long reading. Sorry, but it's a long reading. But you know what? This is a big, heady issue. I don't expect them to get a ton of views on this one. But this is one of those things where, for a lot of us in the United States, we think the world sort of revolves around our country. And generally speaking, we have an outsized influence on the rest of the world. But this shit is real. This is big stuff. Because you're talking the Middle East. You're talking stability in the Middle East. And we know a lot of problems come out of the Middle East. So this is huge. What's the Supreme Court going to do? They're working behind the scenes. Guess who they're working behind the scenes with? I think the Supreme Court's also working with the various intelligence agencies. And they're juggling. They're trying to figure out what their next move is going to be. The value of calling this unconstitutional versus allowing it. And that debate there that's going on. And again, you've got the turmoil underneath here. It's also, it's also a thing of values. Where are our values? What do we do in this situation? They have a pretty good idea what they need to do in this situation, but there's a lot of turmoil, and their decision probably might cause more turmoil. In the past, we have the Ace of Swords. This was the court that was, they got the final say. If something was reasonable, it was reasonable. If it was unreasonable, it was unreasonable. They got the final say on it. No frickin' kings. No rulers. You have the prime minister, not a king. And now they're being told to take a hike. It's going to be up to the Supreme Court to try and see if they can calm some things down. Maybe they can find some workaround for this law. But right now, they're trying to figure out a way to navigate this. But they've got the intelligence agencies to help them. And maybe what they're trying to do is buy some time. Calm things down, buy some time, and see what they can do with the intelligence agencies. It's the government, yeah. So the government's over everything. It's the government, the intelligence agencies, the army, the police force. It's all those things. The whole legal system over there is being impacted by this. And it's coming, that it's the end. It's the end of an era for them. Again, the king is dead. Trample the king. They don't want kings. Having a king is the death of their country. It's the death of their way of doing things. And I think they're going to try and bring an end to this problem that they're seeing with the government. They'll be instrumental in it. Okay, so 5 of coins being left out in the cold. I think with their ruling, I think they're going to rule that the law is unconstitutional. Well, their version of it, it's not reasonable. And then they're going to be disbanded. I think that's what's going to happen. That's going to be your constitutional crisis. They're going to stand up for the rule of law, and then they get disbanded. They get tossed out. And now what? And they know that this is a risk. But they have no good choices. The Supreme Court has no good choices whatsoever. And the one thing I have seen with, or I've always envisioned with the folks in Israel, they're tough. Everybody in the Middle East is tough. They deal with a lot. Israel has been surrounded for a long time. They do some of their own worst damage to themselves with how they've treated the Palestinians. I'm not going to cast judgment on it. That's their deal. But I'm just saying, I can at least say, sometimes you're your own worst enemy with things. I think a lot of the young people are much more progressive and accepting of the Palestinians, and they don't want war with them. The older people, who are more conservative, bearing grudges, they don't want anything to do with that. Parking that for a moment, they are a tough, passionate people. And if the Supreme Court's understanding that what they're going to do might get them disbanded, they might do it anyways, because that's the moral and ethical thing to do. Same thing with those the fighter pilots, the reserve Air Force pilots. They threatened to resign if the government went a certain way. The government went that way, half of them resigned. They are true to their word. Okay. Assuming that the Supreme Court's disbanded, the police are trying to maintain order. And if you're not the Supreme Court, they're not going to be taking their lead from the Supreme Court. They'll be taking it from the executive branch. And police do tend to attract conservatives, don't they? What's going to happen with Netanyahu? What's going to happen with Netanyahu after this whole thing plays out? One of the former leaders of the country basically compared Netanyahu's moment as one of the most important in Jewish history, right up there with Moses. And the article, and I understood where he was going with it. Some people scoff, like, you shouldn't compare Netanyahu with Moses. That's not a fair comparison. It's an insult to Moses. But his point is being that the very existence of Jews in Israel is on the line. And just like the decisions Moses had to make, Netanyahu has to make those. How does he want to be remembered in history? Let's find out how the energies currently look. What's going to happen with Netanyahu? He's going to come to an agreement, or there's going to be an agreement made. Let's do the whole spread. And something's going to be manifested. Is this about Netanyahu, or is this about the removal of Netanyahu? Justice card. That's interesting. Justice could be served on this one. Okay, in the past, Netanyahu coming forward with his offer and the right wing, the extremists, as to what they're going to do with the country. Celebrating their victory of overtaking the country. Again, it's the stinky fish. It's this is not the offer that anybody wants. This is a horrific idea, and there's lots of protests about that. This is about the government and what's the government going to do. Okay, 4 wands. Looks like somebody's going to be leaving. I don't think this is welcoming. I think this is going to be leaving because the Justice card is underneath there. I think it'll take a while, but the forces that are going to come around are going to basically, there's going to be an agreement to remove this magician, this person that tried to create this fiasco. Yeah, there will be justice underneath all of it. I do believe that once they figure out who the leader is going to be for Israel, they will, and basically a path forward, then Netanyahu will be removed. But they're going to let everything play out. That's just the way it's going to be. I think the intelligence agency is intelligent enough to know when things have gone too far. So they'll have a plan to prevent things from going too far. They'll see where everything is going, and if they can pull it off, they'll try and return Israel back to where it was, back to its starting place before this whole process began. And maybe, just maybe, they have a talk with Netanyahu and tell him to undo what he's done. And then people, if you look at it that way, people will celebrate. It'll just be one of those weird things that happened. The government is put back to where it used to be, and he may not be removed in the process. Maybe he's hailed like Moses for making the right decision. Okay. Thank you for suffering through this very, very long reading with me. We'll keep an eye on it and how developments go in Israel. Again, I cannot stress this enough. This is a hugely important event in the world right now. This is as big as it gets. It's even bigger than Trump's stupid trials. This is world changing right there. Okay. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for supporting my channel. I really do appreciate it. I hope for peace in the Middle East. I hope Israel comes out with the most benevolent outcome that can come from this situation. And maybe that Israel can, if they can calm things down there, they can calm things around in their general vicinity, and things can start being better for all people who live in that area. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.